Good morning, my name is Hazel Clark and I'm a therapist and Pilates instructor at Mountain Massage Company in the UK, and I am going to take you through a dynamic reformer class this morning. This isn't a beginner class, this is more of an intermediate, possibly with a couple of advanced moves in. I'll try to give a couple of variations, but this is a more dynamic class. So I'm going to start with 2 springs on. So I've probably got roughly 2 units on, depending on your springs. So I've kind of got sort of, roughly 2 units on, probably, something like that. Because we are going to go into some single leg stuff. My headrest is flat down and my foot bar, it is in a high position. For me, that's not quite vertical. So you want your foot bar in a high position and your headrest down. So we're going to start with a few pelvic tucks and tilts this morning. So just taking a moment to tuck and tilt that pelvis. Now, we are going to go into some bridges in a second. So what you could do is start with your feet on the foot plate. If you didn't want to go straight into your high bridges, you could add more springs on as well to make it a bit more stable. And we're going to start to articulate up into our bridges. So I've only got a couple of units on, so this is going to start to work my back chain a little bit harder from quite early on. So as I say, if you need to warm up a little bit more, need a bit more stability, add more springs on, or bring your feet down onto the foot plate, get the foot bar out of the way. So I'm just rolling up and articulating up. So we have our headrest flat down, and I'm using this as a bit of spinal mobility. So tipping my hips backwards, imprinting my spine into the carriage, just engaging through those deep gluteal muscles. So in between the sitting bones, around the tailbones, pulling up and in, and lifting those hips up. As I come back down, I'm trying to peel the spine back down. So I'm trying to replace each bit bone by bone back down until we're back down. Now, the aim of the game is to try and keep the carriage in. I've drifted a little bit. It will be slightly tougher. And I've chosen to go on this section on a couple of, I guess, slightly lighter springs, just because we're going to go into a bit of a sequence in a moment. Okay. So you can stick with your bridges, as I say, have more support if you need to. Or we can start to add in a little bit. So up in this high position, I'm going to take the knees out and bring the knees back to parallel. So I'm just butterflying the knees out to the side. Hopefully my hips are staying nice and high. I'm thinking about lengthening through this lower back, so making sure that the back isn't arching in this position. And we're just gently taking the knees out to the side and coming back in. All the time thinking about tucking that tailbone just ever so slightly and lengthening through this lower back. My head's nice and relaxed, my chin's just gently tucked, and I'm kind of on my upper back, kind of shoulder blade level, not kind of all the way up onto my neck. Just going to do 2 more. Last one. And I'm going to curl that all the way back down. Okay, so this is a dynamic class this morning, so we are kind of getting sort of stuck into it. It's quite early in the morning here in the UK as I'm recording this. Curling back up, and I'm going to add in some little pulses. So I'm just going to, again, think about keeping that lower back nice and lengthened. I'm just going to pulse up, and I'm going to go for 8, for 7, for 6, for 5, for 4, for 3, 2, for 1. I'm going to hold up there, go back down if you need to, and I'm going to start to take this out into extension. So this is where you see that we kind of need that slightly lighter spring. So if you have got more springs on and you want to do this move, you're going to have a bit of a spring adjustment and then come back into this exercise. So again, the idea is keeping this back nice and lengthened, that we're sending the carriage away. And if you want to bring the breath in, we're breathing out as we send the carriage away, and in as we come back in. So really thinking about utilising those respiratory muscles, getting that movement, engaging those muscles to help us engage our core a little bit as we send the carriage away. Waking up those hamstrings. Last 3. Lengthen through the lower back for the last 2. Last 1. And curling it all the way back down. You can hug those knees in towards your chest just to bring that back into a little bit of flexion, and just rock the knees from side to side. Okay, let's work into a little bit of single legs. So bringing one leg up into my tabletop, and I'm going to send the carriage away with a single leg. So ideally, this first sequence is probably done with what you would do your single leg series on. But if you need to pop more or less springs on at any time, obviously just go ahead and do so. So starting with our tabletop. So my ankle, my knee and my hip on my left hand side as I'm doing this is roughly in line. I'm wanting to make sure there's no kind of hitching and movement through the waist. So I've just got my fingertips on my pelvis and my thumbs on my ribs, just to give me a little bit of feedback to make sure there's no sort of shifting and hitching going on through the waist. I do want to try and absorb this movement through the leg and the hip. And I'm going to take this into my bicycles. So as I bring the carriage back in, I'm going to send the leg away over the foot bar. So sending the carriage out, bringing that leg into tabletop. As we control that carriage in, I'm going to send my foot over the foot bar and extend that leg. So as if I wanted to put a footprint on the wall in front of me. So this is really working our kind of single leg stability. I'm going to do a couple more. Last one. And I'm going to swap sides. So this is a bit of a quick blast through this morning. As I say, it's quite a dynamic class. We're going to try and get through quite a lot in a fairly short space of time. So really good if people are a bit time poor. So starting with my tabletop on this side. Okay, let's take that into the bicycles. So I'm going to start to add in that leg extension. So as we bring the carriage back in, we're going to straighten the other leg away, probably about 45-degree angle, something like that. As if you wanted to plant a footprint on the wall in front of you. I'm going to go for 4 more. Last 3. Last 2. Last 1. And I'm just going to go for a couple of little double legs, but I'm going to add in a bit of an abdo prep. So it is a little bit awkward, but if you want to, you can bring your hands to the back of the head. You just sort of have to negotiate your head pads. And for our abdo prep, or sometimes called a curler, that's when you kind of want to think about that lower back staying in neutral. And we want to think about the movement coming from below the rib cage. So like to think about the rib cage kind of moving down towards the pelvis. So imagine those little imaginary springs attaching from the front of your ribs down to the front of your pelvis. Imagine those shortening. Some people like to sort of think about connecting the back of the rib cage into the carriage, into the floor. And I'm just going to do a little bit of parallel double legs. staying up in this abdo prep. If you want to, you could make this a sort of a dynamic movement, and we could curl up. Something like that. You don't have to have the hands under the head. If you've got the neck control, you could stay up here. I'm just going to do 4 more. Last couple. So make sure we've not got too much chin going on here and the movement's coming from the rib cage. Last one. And lower back down. And let's just add in a few little standalone abdo preps there just to get that movement. So I'm going to forget about the lower body for the moment. Obviously we've got everything switched on, but we're thinking about reaching those, if you've got the hands down by your side, we're thinking about reaching the fingertips away and drawing up. So if some people like to imagine we've got a little thread coming out of their sternum, and that thread is just pulling us up. So the movement wants to come from just underneath the ribs rather than the head. So think about that head and neck staying nice and still. There'll be a bit of tension through the neck, but if we can, we want to avoid that sort of chicken peck effect. Let's go for a couple more. Let's do 2 more. Last one. And all the way back down. Fantastic. We're going to have a little bit of a hip twist in level 2. So taking straight out of the mat work series. Let's glue the ankles and the knees together, and we can just allow the hips and the knees to roll side to side. So this is just to ease off the hips and ease off the lower back. Just a little bit of nice mobility for lumbar spine there. Okay, we're going to change positions now, so we are going to bring ourselves up and we're going to have a bit of a spring change and a little bit of a position change. So we are going to come and face the front of our reformer. So I have got my foot plate in here. If you need to have a grip mat on yours, then please do so. And I'm just going to have I'm going to just adjust my foot line. Mine felt slightly high on that series actually. I probably could have had it one much slower. It depends on the reformer really as to what we're doing there. But I'm going to have my foot on my foot plate. So this is our single thigh series. Ooh, I'm also going to adjust some springs here. So I'm going to go down to 1 heavy spring, 1 unit. And I'm going to come into some single thighs. So I'm going to make this hamstring stretch dominant at first. So my back leg is going to stay where it is, and I'm going to push away with my front leg to straighten that one. Okay. So the back leg at the moment is going to stay roughly where it is. So this is kind of our single thigh stretch. But it's sort of also a bit of a hybrid of some of the standing series that we do if you're APPI trained. So it'll probably be called something completely different if you're not APPI trained. But you'll get the idea. So basically I'm just taking this for a little bit of a hamstring stretch to begin with. So front leg dominant to start with. What I'm wanting to do is open and push away with that front leg in order to get a hamstring stretch. Now my hamstrings are super tight, so you would never see me able to get to full extension. Some of you will, and also some of you will probably be much more comfortable with your foot up on this foot bar. Oh, actually, that's not bad for me today. Maybe I'll do that as well. So sometimes I find this a little bit too limiting. And if you want to make this a true exercise and you've got the control and the balance, obviously you can go no hands there. I feel like I want a little bit of stability here today. I want more of a stretch. And also it's early in the morning and maybe I need a little bit more stability this morning. So just getting a little bit of a hamstring stretch there, it feels absolutely lovely. And now I'm going to try and take it into a little bit more of a hip flexor. So I might bring my leg back down now, because what I'm going to want to do now is push that back leg away. So this is much more about sinking down into the stretch. So rather than pushing over that front leg, we're kind of pushing over the back leg and sinking that the front of that hip down, just to get a little bit more of an opening, a little bit more of a pull through the front of that hip on the other side. Lovely. Oh, I'm just gonna come over and do the same on the other side. So let's see how this hamstring feels to me. So again, pushing away that front leg. So I'm feeling super tight in my hammies this morning. And then I'm going to take that into my hip flexor stretch, modified hip flexor stretch, and send the back one away. You can do a bit of a hybrid of two, really. I can't, because I'm a bit too restricted by being super tight, so I have to do one at a time. And again, you can obviously do these with your foot on the foot bar, you can do these with hands off if you want to make it more of a balance and stability exercise, but I'm just going to kind of isolate that stretch. Right, staying on the same spring, we're going to go into our knee stretch with a flat back. So my start position, my feet are on my shoulder pads, bottom sitting back towards my heels, hands are raised, thumbs and fingers all the way over the bar here. And we're just going to open out, pressing away over the back of the feet, and then tucking tucking the knees back under as you come back in. So the idea is the spine and the back stay kind of in neutral. There'll be a little bit of movement there. There has to be. But what we're wanting to avoid is kind of losing it and dipping down there. So shoulders stay nice and stable, chin tucked, neck long. We're pressing away and then drawing those knees back under. So you can change springs here actually if you want to. So I'm finding this a bit super easy actually. So I'm going to go down to probably, yeah, that feels a bit more challenging. So I've probably gone down to, that one is probably more like quarter for me. So that's just going to test the abdominals a little bit more. So the heavier spring on this one will be a little bit more stable and a little bit more controlled. The lighter the spring on this exercise, the harder it will be. So pressing over the back feet and then drawing the knees back under. Things to watch for this one is you want to make sure that the hips aren't drifting and that you're not being kind of pushed and sort of drifting away through those arms as well. Shoulders stay back and down, chuck the chin, neck stays long. Let's just do one more. And then I may have overblown this myself. I might have to change my spring. I'm going to try the knees off. So this is a little bit like our leg point prone prep on the mat work series. I'm going to float my knees off, send the carriage out, draw that carriage back in and pop those knees back down. I might just add, I've got a very, very light spring there, so I've probably gone up to half. So, knees off, carriage away, draw those knees back in and back down. So you can stay doing the knee stretches with the flat back, or we can take this into our knee stretch series with knees off. Floating those knees up, sending the carriage away, drawing it back in, knees back down. I did say there are a couple more advanced moves in here today. So with a firmer spring, this is going to feel slightly easier. It's still a hard move because I'm still holding body weight. I've got probably maybe half a spring on here. I've got quite an odd selection of springs on this reformer, so it is hard to say really, but I've got fairly light resistance here, which is super tough. I'm finding it pretty hard. Okay, I'm just going to do two more. There we go. And then I'm going to come and have a little, I'm going to stay with a fairly light spring. So I'm going to just adjust a couple of bits. I'm going to put, that probably is now half a unit, so I'm on about half a spring. I'm going to come and have a little stand up for my elephant. So again, anything standing makes it slightly more advanced, so we have a few things to think about. And I'm also going to raise this foot bar up slightly, so I lowered it down, didn't I? There we go. So foot bar is in a nice kind of upright position. So depending on how tight or not your hamstrings are, will depend on your standing position here. So with our elephant, I am limited by my stiff hamstrings, so I might need to step a little bit forward. You might need a grip mat on your reformer. You want to think about that upper and mid back being flat, shoulders stay retracted back and down, and the movement comes from the hips. So think about pulling in around tailbone and sit bones, and we send the back of the legs out to the wall behind us. So I'm getting quite a broad stretch down through my hamstrings, down into my calves, all the way from my lower back. So things to watch with this one are that we're not drifting and rounding too much in the spine. I guess your upper body wants to feel kind of similar as it might do like in a sort of down dog position if you do yoga. And we're sending the back of the legs away and then using those abdominals to draw those feet back under you. For some of you, you might need to stand a little bit further back with the feet at their hip pads. And we're thinking about that spine staying as long as possible. Just going to do one more. And then we're going to take it into a single leg. So I'm going to try to have one leg out behind me and work with a single leg. So this is going to change the feeling of the force going through the arms slightly. You sort of end up dominating a little bit with one arm. So I'm on about half a spring here. Again, a heavier spring will make it feel more stable, but it's going to make it feel maybe slightly tougher to move. And a lighter spring will be less stable, but easier to move. So there's pluses and minuses to both. As I say, this is not a beginner one, this is more intermediate and advanced kind of little class this morning. And I'm going to pop to the other side. So again, depending on your flexibility and your strength, some of you will be able to hold your leg much straighter and much higher without it affecting your body position. So you could probably see actually I just rolled to one side. So let's make sure the hips are staying kind of facing down. So those front bits, the pointy, sticky, outy bits of your pelvis, let's think about those staying angled down towards the floor or towards your carriage. And think about that back leg being nice and long. And let's see if we can sort of get equal length and equal weight going through the arms. I'm just going to do one more on this side. And then I'm going to bring it into a little bit of obliques. So, from our elephant, we're going to walk both feet over towards one side of the carriage. My hands are going to stay central. And so I'm going to position myself so my feet are pointing ever so slightly towards the opposite side of my foot bar. So I've got a little bit of an angle at the hips and the pelvis and the feet, but I'm trying to rotate my body and stay as central as I can with my body. And this will just make the movement a little bit more into our oblique muscles. And same thing, we're sending the carriage out towards the back wall and then drawing it back in underneath us. Let's think about trying to stay lengthened through the back of the neck and through the upper back. Just going to do a couple more. One more. And let's work on the other side. So, my feet are just ever so slightly pointed at an angle towards the corner of the foot bar here. But my body, I'm trying to keep that slightly rotated, so I'm still looking down at my springs, trying as best I can to keep kind of equal weight going down through the arms. And I'm getting glorious kind of fascial stretch here, but I'm also just ever so slightly emphasising the oblique muscles here. I'm going to do 2 more. Last one. Oh, that's lovely. I really enjoyed that stretch. Okay, so I'm going to do this class in 2 halves. So when I post it, there will be 2 sections, and this one will be the first part of the class, and then I will record the second half a bit later on. So you can either do this as a standalone, 30 minutes, I think it's about 30 minutes, or you can do both together and it will be about an hour's class. Thank you for joining me this morning. My name is Hazel from Mountain Massage Company here in the UK, and I hope that you'll join me for the second part of this class.